Really?
Oh.
That's not fun.
Boy,
Guess we didn't have time. Oh, okay. Is this one that's in the program?
I believe so.
okay.
Hey, where's our other set?
Where's our what?
Other set.
Oh, I didn't print it out.
Oh,
You the reader?
I don't even,
I don't know.
I know last week happened.
Yeah, it was kind
I
of.
know there was
this
a,
week.
I know there was a last
Partaker in
week.
that.
You know, that would give me a reason why but yeah, I couldn't tell you what happened last week.
Could we tell you?
You know what? You might need to.
They make up stories.
You know, I mean, it's probably going to be fairly believable. Trust me, what you could probably make up. Still in the realm of possibility for given the things I've done.
What's your excuse?
I don't have one. I don't know.
I have a good one. Monday morning, I found out we couldn't flush anything down the drain. And it didn't get repaired until Friday noon.
Well,
Wow.
that
I'll bet that was fun.
We had a drain
I was so
problem,
glad I was
too.
close to the church.
We got Meridian Plumbing out the same day.
Well, they couldn't figure out what the clog was or where it was, so they ended up putting 2 stacks outside. So if there's a clog again, they can check that stack or that stack.
And you have sewers.
awesome.
Yeah, but we were private until we hit the sewers. Do you want,
There's.
you're not on, are you?
Oh yeah, we are.
All right,
Totally.
I'll tell you all later.
All the gory details.
Don't wanna talk
But it's
about
something
it.
about
Hey, this
two old
is
people in the
real
house.
stuff, man. Our Bible studies deal with reality.
Sewers and.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, backed up sewage. I mean, that actually plays. You know, my sermon is about all the lies that we believe and the truth that we want to be, and all the crap that's said out there that we want to believe. So hey,
Mouthful of coffee.
So I think that works quite well as a tie-in. So yeah, I you know what? I didn't even bother to look at what the regular readings are for this week. Man, I really don't know what happened last week. I swear, it was St. Patrick's Day,
Oh,
for
well,
what
there.
that's worth. But I mean,
He's Irish, that's the end of it.
I wish I could chalk it up to that. No, it was like a normal week, which is weird. Usually it's like we have abnormal weeks and that's where I lose it, but no, it was normal. So this Sunday, third Sunday of Advent, Lent? I think it's the third. So in our series, today is Glory to the God who tells us the truth.
Who tells us what?
The truth.
The truth, okay. Don't drop that last word in the sentence.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, we old folks.
Oh, I will try
It's
not
just all
to.
because of your sewage.
Truth.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So we have these texts that, actually the first Kings 17 one, really is probably just the tie-in there is the very last verse. The woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth." So there's your connection there. It's a weak connection, but it's there. This is Elijah who stays with this widow and her son. Son dies, and Elijah appeals to God, and he comes back to life. So that's, like I said, that's kind of a weaker connection there. The Romans 6 verse, what then, are we to sin because we are not under law but under grace? By no means. So this is Paul dealing with the people who would say, like, hey, if we are saved by grace, and God's grace abounds in forgiveness, we should give him more to forgive. Like, if people see that we are forgiven, and that's a good thing, then the more we sin, the more we're forgiven, meaning the more God's grace is poured out upon us. I mean, it's logical.
Not really.
In a sense, it is. But so Paul is addressing that as like, of course not, by no means. Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to righteousness? But thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed, and having been set free from sin, you become slaves of righteousness. And speaking in human terms because of your natural limitations, for just as you once presented your members as slaves to impurity and to lawlessness, leading to more lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves to righteousness, leading to sanctification. So, I don't get into this in the sermon, but it's always fun to bring that passage in because we're going to be slaves no matter what. It's just you're either a slave to sin or you're a slave to righteousness. And the problem that we have with that, I mean, we have a lot of baggage with slavery, just in our country as people, and slavery has a lot of specific connotations for us. But when we're talking about like slave to sin, we get that because that's bad. Slave to sin, sin is bad, slavery bad, so that works. But when you talk about being slaves to righteousness, all of a sudden we have dissonance because slavery bad, righteousness good. So how can you do that? But really, this is just who is it that reigns over you? Is it sin, death, and the devil, or is it God? And when the way we talk about our faith and how it is our salvation is completely dependent on God. He does everything for us. Yeah, I mean, we are completely dependent. We can't do anything. We can't affect anything having to do with our righteousness. It is God alone. So we are slaves to righteousness in that. He has bought us at a price. So we have to kind of disassociate a little bit our contextual baggage with slavery and just more of a straightforward, who is it that we owe allegiance to? Who are we completely dependent on and follow and serve? We have two options: sin or righteousness. Take your pick. Which one?
I'd rather stick to righteousness.
There we go. Good. Okay. All right. Good job. Yes. So yeah. So the Romans passage is good. We look at the gospel text in the message today, particularly where Jesus says, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples. You will know the truth will set you free. And then if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So, a lot of talk about truth and kind of what we define as truth today in our world, which is fun, because we have a very weird idea of what is true in our daily lives. I didn't want to get too far into. See, here's the problem. If I say something like, when I bring up the concept of like fake news, that's just going to set so many people off, and everybody's going to go right to their like preferred direction and like, well, they're fake news, which is really fun for me. Because there's a lot of times where I want to preach on something that's very specific or could be very specific, but because of the way it's treated in kind of the public square, it's just so polarizing that it's hard for me to address it broadly and keep people from retreating to their little bunkers. And I've mentioned this before. This is why I usually don't say, like, if we pray for the prayers today, we pray for our leaders, our government, authorities. I don't use names. I should. I should probably be a little bit stronger on that and be like, no, these are the names of our governor, our president, all this.
Gotta pray for all of us.
Well, yeah, I mean, we should pray for all, of them,
That's right.
regardless of who you support. But it's
Not
just,
just in our country,
oh,
the
absolutely.
whole world, and the leaders.
It's just, in my experience, we are so inundated with the politicization of things and just kind of the vitriol that's all attached to it.
Picking out the small parts.
It's hard to hear even like, you know, okay. So in my sermon, I was writing how something about how our truth usually supersedes, or you know, our truth is held up, whereas you know you have the truth of Christ, but we like to have our truth higher. And I was writing, I'm like, how do I want to say this? And I wrote it out. I'm like, you know, our truth trumps Christ's truth.
You can't
And I
say
look
that
at,
word.
I know, and at this end, I'm like, ooh, I don't want to use that word.
Supersedes.
But even I'm superseded, and that didn't feel right because I'm like, because in the way I wrote it, I'm like, the only word that fits there is trumps because that's what it does. And it's just like, you know what? I don't, because you know, like, I don't want to hear the hurrahs and I don't want to hear the gnashing of teeth. It's like I'm
Neutral.
right. I'm like right down the middle. I don't like anything politics related to like
Shouldn't get so upset about something like that.
So I know, but it's just like one of these things where it's like, there's so much baggage there. I should, you know.
So we'll have to listen carefully to figure out the word you use.
I don't even remember. I might ditch the sentence completely. I don't even know.
He might
Maybe if
have
I-
changed
I-
his whole.
If only we could if we could create a verb where I could say, you know, this trumps this, but this Whitmer's that, and then everybody would be equally offended and upset. So, like I don't know, or whatever. So that's the challenge.
Stick
but-
with Jesus.
Pretty much. But this whole we have our own truth. It's like, yeah, that's all of us. I think there's a point in my sermon where I say, if you are automatically, when I'm talking about the people who twist the truth and only want their truth and view it their way, if you're thinking about those people, yeah, you're one of those people because we're all those people. We all do it. I think I admitted to it in our Wednesday night during 1 Corinthians when we started talking about women's head coverings. And I was like, okay, this is really dicey territory, and I'm very uncomfortable with it. Because, I know what God says about this, and I say, yes, this is absolutely true. I still don't like it very much. Maybe it's because I'm born and raised in Southern California, and that's just, the whole liberal West Coast sort of, ingrained in me. No, women are not subservient and women are not submissive, and it's like, no, equality, and it's all good. And yet there's this whole section about, it's not what you put on your head, but just the headship of Christ and husband and wife and all that. And it's like, yes, I agree with everything Christ says here, or what Christ says through Paul, and I agree with this, and the doctrine, yes, absolutely. It's still hard, though, sometimes. And I don't get into the sermon, but I think another good message in that is, God's word is true. Okay, confess that. Does not mean you're going to like it. In fact, a lot of times you're not, and you might clash with it quite a bit. And if that is a problem, if you are like, you know what, but I shouldn't. Like, okay, fine, no, you shouldn't.
Just learn more about it and try and understand it better.
Well, that's always a good way. But I go to something like the imprecatory Psalms. We have a whole section of Psalms, not a huge section, a handful of them, that are very violent prayers, nasty ones. There's one in particular I love that I am so waiting to find a right sermon for. Where it ends, because most of the Psalms that are like this are kind of like, Lord, my enemies surround me, woe is me. Lord, I want you to drive them in front of me so I can see them fall into a pit and die and suffer greatly, tear their heads off, that kind of stuff. Usually at the end they say, but Lord, I submit to you, and there's always like a turn. There's one psalm, if I'm remembering correctly. It's great because it doesn't have that turn. It ends just with and I want to see them, dashed to pieces. I want their wives and their children to be torn asunder, and for them to be blotted out forever and ever. Amen. It's like that's how the psalm ends. It's like, ooh, yee.
Sounds like an honest prayer.
Well, yeah, it's very honest. I would say, well, our sensibility would be like, that's a bad prayer. Like, you should not pray for that. That's probably not good.
But it explains a lot about Gaza,
About
what's going on in the Middle East. The
oh,
Israelites
oh, okay.
and Israel and Gaza and the whole thing, this obliterate them.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. It's a prayer that reveals what's wrong with us. I mean, and that's the fun thing is those prayers. They're expressing like what's wrong with my enemies. This is what's wrong with them. This is why I want them to die and suffer. And you match that up with somewhere Jesus says, "You've heard it said, you shall not murder." I say, "If you think, you fool." And it's like, ooh, somebody should have told the psalmist, because they're like, oh. But those are some of the most honest psalms. I feel more honest when I'm praying one of those kinds of prayers where I'm just angry and I'm letting it and I'm just venting to God. I'm like, this is what I want you to do. Than when I'm just like, Lord, I know I should be better. Create in me a clean heart, oh God. It's like, I know that's a good prayer and that's good and all that. But
it doesn't fit the...
But I don't always, I don't always feel, I feel more angry than I do like, create in me a clean heart. Maybe I'm saying too much. Pastor's got some issues.
There's a manner in which you can read those psalms if you don't make them specific as just rejoicing in the destruction of evil. And this is something I think we try to breed out of ourselves for this reason, that we say like, we should want good for people. And see, I think that's true. I think when you say that, you kind of miss the idea that we should be looking for the destruction of evil. That we should hope for good to reign.
Right. And righteous anger. And this is one of those things where, see, and you can have I have a different approach to that than some people. Pastors, we're all different. So I know a lot of guys who might like appeal to that, like we should have righteous anger.
The only person that can have righteous anger is God.
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, true righteous anger, absolutely. I used to be very much so like, I hated slogans, right? So what would Jesus do? It's like, oh. So I was super Lutheran in my approach to that. Anybody I see, WWJD, I'd be like, oh, you're not Jesus. So, it's not what Jesus would do, it's what did Jesus do? Very pious Lutheran. The cross, go there, don't worry about what would he do, what did he do? And then I morphed into, like, what would Jesus do? Well, he would make a whip of cords and beat you out of the temple. Like, Jesus chose violence sometimes, and his was a righteous anger. Because, it was... I don't know how you can do overturning the tables and making a whip to beat people with as something other than violent, right?
Righteous anger.
But yeah, it's righteous anger. It's totally justified and right and good. And to see that, God is loving, yes, but he's also angry. He's angry over sin. He's not happy about it. Anger in and of itself is not sinful. Which is where I tell a lot of people, because when people say, well, I'm angry about this and I know I shouldn't be, it's like, no, you should be. Anger is good when it's this. The problem that I have and where I kind of I don't focus so much on this is more along the line like we can't have it. And not that we can't or that we shouldn't, but at least in my experience, so this is just for me, when I try to have this, it's like, it's kind of like when you light a match. Initially there's like that really big, and you hear the sound, and it's like a really big light, but then it settles down, and it's just normal and like a
You're
little flame.
automatically going to a dark place.
Yeah, it's like it burns right. My anger is righteous for a moment, because I'm like, yes, I'm angry at the sin. and then real quick I turn from, no, it's the sinner. I have names and faces, and I'm visualizing them.
But this is somehow like indulging in that anger purposefully. I mean, anger is an emotion that bubbles up, right? Like you can have righteous anger and feel it for what it is without deciding to go down that path, you know?
It's hard. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's,
I mean, I
that's
agree
the
with you.
challenge.
You should cut off that path.
Right.
But like, I mean, the way in which we feel righteous anger, I think, is like you hear about injustice and you just get angry suddenly. I mean, you hear about like a child being abused or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And like you're just angry.
Yeah.
And it's not even specific because you don't even maybe know who the abuser is or something. But like that anger, that's good anger. You're,
Right.
you're angry at the injustice. You then shouldn't, I agree, follow that. And
Right,
like,
well,
let
and
me
that's-
dig into that.
Because I
Sorry,
think
I
the
interrupted
temptation
you.
to follow that's where
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to go into that. When it's abstract, absolutely. Like even, well, I was going to say like the God. Well, we can't even abstract that anymore. It used to be where just the idea of, you know what, the internet ruined us all. When we had access to all this information, we know what's going on around the world now. It's like darn it. We can't abstract things anymore. It's like it's always there in your face. It's hard to go there. So I support this 100% and being angry at sin, but it's just so easy to we become blind to just like the people who are suffering because of it, and like I would rather be moved from that anger to compassion than just stay angry about sin, which is it's a good place. We should always be angry about sin and want it to stop, but where do we take that? Is like, well, how are we going to stop it? Well, there's your problem. How are we going to stop it? Well, are you going to stop like the acts? Okay, we can do that to a degree, but I mean the core issue. Before I get too much on the rant, it's getting closer.
The psalm that you mentioned a while ago,
Yes.
written by an inspired writer, was this inspired psalmist expressing righteous anger?
See, the way I look at that is he was expressing righteous anger, but took it in a, well, you could paper over it by saying, well, what he's describing is, ultimate judgment. That well, if we're dealing with real sin, then there's real judgment for that, and the, watching the wives and the children be trampled. That's just an expression of that. I mean, I don't know. I can't get into the psalmist's head. My gut feeling is like, okay, that expresses righteous anger, but also shows it taking it that step where it's like, like whoa. Like, I'm angry about this. Lead them to repentance. Somebody who commits a crime that gets a death penalty. I would prefer to pray like lead them to repentance, not make sure he gets the electric chair. Like,
In that case, justice has
hard.
already been served. You are not the agent of justice
Right.
anymore. You're now the agent of compassion.
yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like, well, he should die for his thing. It's like, and just there's so many. Yeah, it's a really tough area to be
Yeah,
in.
Jonah didn't have righteous anger when he was talking about the people of Nineveh.
He ended up in a fish.
His anger was at God. His righteous anger was
Indirectly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, directly. 'Cause
Well,
at the end, I mean, and even like I would say, even Jonah's like he wasn't impassioned with his preaching to the people. I mean, he in the text he went in and Nineveh. He's like 40 days, Nineveh will be done. Peace. It's like he wasn't angry. He was like, oh, you sinners. He's like, I hate you people, but in 40 days you'll be done with anyway. And then afterwards he was like, I don't like you, God. I'm ticked off at you because you're gracious, you're merciful. They don't deserve it. So that righteous anger was like, where it was righteous anger from God in the beginning, where he's like, the evil has come up before me. They will be judged. I will bring great evil upon them in their destruction. But then he turns, he repents. God repents of his anger, and has mercy. And then Jonah has righteous anger towards God because this isn't my judgment. my judgment is Nineveh should burn. And that's, yeah, oh.
Is that righteous though?
Righteous? Well,
On Jonah's part?
no.
No, not really.
Well, at that point, yeah, because they repented. They turned to God. And Jonah wasn't, I don't think his expression wasn't like, okay, sure, they've repented, but there's still consequences. They did commit, so they should be held accountable. It was like, no, God, you spared them. They're supposed to be, but you had mercy. Yeah, Jonah's fun. Jonah's a great one.
Like I knew you were a gracious and merciful God.
Yeah.
Abounding in steadfast love. I didn't want that for them.
Right. Jonah's a hard one to because it's 4 chapters. It's so short, and the twist is so good, and it's hard to not jump ahead from the get-go, because it's just like, oh man, because it reframes everything. Like, he runs away from God because God, that he's just so gracious and merciful. And,
God tells him to go this way, he goes that way.
Right, because it's like, ooh, Nineveh, yeah, I wouldn't want to go there either. And it's like, no, it's because he knows that God will probably, be all teddy bear softy. And we don't want that. We want God to judge our enemies.
Be gracious and merciful to me, not my enemy.
Absolutely. Amen. That'll preach.
Is that one of the Psalms?
That's the psalm we started with. Anyway.
Yeah. So the whole concept of righteous anger is very challenging, because it's well, kind of what I was talking about before is when I have to be careful about the words I choose, because if I'm going in a direction, here's my point that I want to get across. My word choice can send people off like that. And I've got to try to get them all back there. And that's why, like, whenever righteous anger comes up, and I think I might have preached on this once or twice, that's a hard one for me, because it's like there's so many ways that it can be derailed a bit. Because it's like, it's not enough for us just to be angry, we need to do something. You can be angry about, like abortion. The children's lives are lost. Like, should you be angry about that? Sure, yeah, absolutely. But what does that anger then lead into? It's like, okay, and so for me, that leads into more of a thinking about the people affected by it. And my bend goes towards that compassion for the people who have suffered and continue to suffer.
Thank you for sharing those stories. It's hard.
Other people, takes them in a different direction. Like, well, we need to, do this. I'm like, well, okay. We can talk about approaches, but it's hard to bring up something without going. And that righteous anger is like, yeah, we can have it.
Just don't let the anger last too long.
Oh yeah, that's.
You gotta have a cutoff point for that.
I think there's even scripture that talks about something about don't let the sun go down in your anger, that kind of thing. Which
then it affects you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a very practical word there that says, yeah, if you let this fester, it'll become something bad. Anybody who's married knows that.
Oh, I was just thinking, my grandma told me when I got engaged, never go to bed angry. Work it out. Doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah,
Now 3 weeks later. No sleep.
Well, see, but then when you're younger, yeah, you're like, so you're more likely to do that. When you get, we just celebrated 20 years in. I was like, let's just drag this out right now, and so we can get it done and just get over it already. That's true. Yeah, don't sleep on it. Don't let it stew, because it goes into weird places. I always worry about people who mention their righteous indignation, because it's like,
Have I put a red dot on myself now?
No,
Righteous anger?
like in the stream of like dealing with like a controversial issue or whatever. Like I have righteous anger over it. It's the same. It's the idea where like, you know, if you have to say like I'm a cool person, it's like no, you're not. Like if you have to say you're a cool person, nah, you're not a cool person. Like I'm a smart person. It's like okay,
Not so much.
you're just telling on yourself now. You know, I'm a good person. It's like
Best to be
let's
silent.
check the tape on that one. Do the Lutheran thing. What does that mean? What do you mean by that? Yeah, I'm more of the like I want to leave that to God. Like yeah, I get angry, but give that over to God so that way you can move past it and
And don't take it back.
do what you can.
It is interesting to know, like this one passage you brought up of Jesus fastening the whip and I mean that's one of hundreds of interactions Jesus had with people who are always trying to trick him and anger him and outrage. You know, so like clearly there's a lesson even there just in the scarcity of it. That like
True.
one in
yeah.
1,000 times maybe you.
Well,
but
well, sure, he has compassion all the time, but that's
Yeah.
not as much fun as like,
Yeah.
the image of Jesus looking around for stuff to make a whip out of. Like, I really need to teach these guys a lesson. That's just more fun.
But the fact that it only happened once.
True,
right?
true.
Like,
And
clearly the correct result or the correct outcome is not to do that. Like every single time.
right.
Though at the same time, he is fairly aggressive, if not physically, with his words. You know,
That's true.
Has, you know, parrot that, you know, that fox, or you know, you.
Pit of vipers.
Right. You know, you're
We're not
fond of the
animals.
devil, like so.
Oh, you know,
there's
that's just
there's gradation there
that's,
too.
that's
No,
just
yeah.
strong hyperbole. He's not really, you know, suggesting. Oh God, I'm streaming. Yeah, no, he his words are very, very straightforward and painful in that regard. So yeah, it's I mean, anger is very much a good godly emotion. It's just what we do with it. I mean, it's the same with anything, you know, like alcohol is bad. It's like that's not bad. I mean, we're gonna be drinking a lot of it in the wedding banquet in paradise, so what you do with it is bad. You know, jealousy. It's good when God does it. You know, we have a jealous God, right? That's good. When we're jealous, it's usually not. In fact, I don't know that. I don't know. I've never been. I can't think of a time I could ever say I've had like that a good godly jealousy over anything.
Goes to coveting.
Well, yeah, it goes real quick. It goes real quick. I don't know. But anyway, so there's a lot of these things where, you know, it's not so much the thing as what we do with it, how we twist it. You know, once sin gets into it, then sin screws it all up. So all of that just to talk about, you know, that today is all about the truth. So, you know, we have our own truths.
Does the truth set you free?
Huh?
But the truth sets you free
His
all
truth.
the time?
His truth does. Absolutely. Our truth, not so much.
That's right.
And I didn't get into it in the sermon, but like, you know, because it's, again, one of those, like, whenever we talk about those people and we always go outwards, you know, oh, we have the truth, the falsehoods that people, you know, parade as the truth out there. Well, I mean, we have issues with that within Christianity. I mean, why do we have so many denominations? We have one truth, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, what's going on there? Why can't we agree?
The
Why do we have
Baptists
to have
made a mistake.
denominations? What's that?
The Baptists made a mistake.
Ah, it's always the Baptist.
Good answer. Good.
I say that as a loving Baptist. I came from the Baptist.
Oh, no, hey. So Lutherans, honestly, because, I mean,
Yeah, I'm joking.
Lutherans have a fun, you know, here's my little Lutheran bashing here.
We have quite a few ex-Baptists in
Oh,
this
yeah.
congregation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're all self-flagellating for whatever reason. Ex-Baptists, ex-Catholics, current Lutherans.
There was Catholic,
Mormons always mystified me.
quite a few Baptists.
Well, they still do. Even the concept of Mormonism mystifies me. But when you're dealing with like the core majority LDS Mormons, it's so fun because they're like, Mormon, they kind of point to the rightness of their beliefs because they are the only ones who haven't splintered. They are monolith. They are all together. What about all these other little LDS spin-offs, these little fundamentalist Mormon offshoots? Oh, I know, it's...
Or all the Mormons I went to college with who were drinking every weekend. No.
Don't shoot the messenger, man. This is when I don't ever do this. When I went online and asked Mormon missionaries to be sent to me, so I can argue with them. That was their thing. Is because I told them I'm a Lutheran. Like, oh, see, so you understand Christianity? There's it's apostate because there's so many divisions. There's no divisions in Mormonism. I'm like,
Well,
there's I beg to differ. But they like to think that they're just so, and Lutherans do the same thing. Where we're like, we're Lutheran. LCMS is Lutheran. Anybody else who has a Lutheran name, they're not Lutheran.
True.
Even Wisconsin is like, well, they might be grandfathered in at some point, but not yet. It's just like and we are the arbiters of what is
grafted
Lutheran.
back in. The olive branch.
What's that?
The LCMS will be grafted back in.
God willing.
Once we learn German.
But so we have that same thing where it's like, we are the only ones, but we're not. And even that is kind of, we hold on to our truth of being pure, pristine,
We're all
Pompous
sinners.
comes to mind.
What's that?
Pompous comes to mind.
Lutherans? Pompous? What?
There you go.
I don't know. Where do you see that?
I mean, they can be in the way
Well,
they
everyone
express
can
it,
be.
but of course we're not really.
So I mean,
Personally.
we're not strangers to the kind of like, well, we have, our truth is right. It's like, okay, good.
The verse says,
About to open up a real big can of worms.
if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yes.
But the problem is that we have the word, we have the truth, but everybody interprets it differently, and so you get all these splits.
Yes. Agreed. If I had the solution,
it's because
I'd
you
be the
can't
new
abide
pope.
in you.
It seems inevitable in a sinful world that is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is.
Till the end.
This is why, in my somewhat blasphemous for a Lutheran take on that, is I don't mind denominations as much because I've used like the Target thing before, where we like, here's the truth that that Christianity is, and then we're all just kind of, denominations are just kind of various points, and of course LCMS, we think we're like right there, of course we are. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't the case. So it's like, you want to find that one. I prefer to look at it like, what, we're circling around it, and various times and spaces, it's like we getting closer to some, the picture I used before with like, the emotionalism, intellectualism, and legalism, I guess. There's good doctrine where it's all about your thought, good feelings, emotion, and the good mission, doing stuff. How it's like the Christian life is about all three of those, but we can never be in all three quadrants at once. We're lucky if we can be in one quadrant at a time. Sometimes we can straddle two. But you know what? Sometimes you need to be in the more headspace of it. And that's where LCMS is good. Sometimes you need to be in the more emotional space. And, are there heresy or are there problems with some of the doctrine? Absolutely. Sure. Are there problems with our doctrine?
Don't dare say.
We're still
Is the
streaming.
recording off?
Well, it's about time to go offline. Gotta get ready for church. I mean, there are certainly problems with how we execute it. I'll say that. That's diplomatic. That will not threaten my ordination. But I mean, definitely ways that we execute. Okay, I got 5 minutes. This may or may not connect. But it was something that was all in my head. So, official LCMS stance, would be that in a college ministry, so you have a college ministry that's like, exists on campus somewhere, right? And it's headed by a pastor even. So a pastor heads a college ministry. Should that pastor baptize people? If a student comes into this ministry, they're listening, they're learning, they have Bible studies, and they come to faith, and they acknowledge it, and they say, hey, I want to be baptized. Apart from anything else, should that pastor baptize them right then and there?
Why
Yes.
not?
In that moment, maybe not.
You mean there's an
Immediately.
argument about whether or not he should do it?
Yes.
You're kidding me.
No. Okay, here's the thing. Not that it can't be done, or even shouldn't be done. You see, here's the LCMS way of skirting around some things, and where the doctrine and practice kind of get fun. Because doctrinally speaking, can you baptize, sure, anyone, anywhere. But properly, how it should be done is within the church. So what a college ministry properly should do is get that person attached to a local congregation, so that way they can be baptized there in the congregation, where now they are kind of handing off that young person to be raised and brought up and to further their support and teaching in the faith in the context of the church.
But this is a college kid,
Yes,
and he's going to only be there 4 years and go off to someplace else?
yes.
That puts
But he
us
would
above
have a
God, doesn't it?
certificate that he's been baptized and that other church would welcome him in.
Besides which, the other church accepting him and raising him, that's like what confirmation is for, right? Is them like building around him and saying.
But see, but if
Those
you don't,
overlap.
if you don't do that, then they could be, they might not set those roots. It's the same. It's the way we say it's not putting ourselves about God. We're not denying what baptism does, and we're not saying that people shouldn't be baptized if they come to faith. It's just that for us, the proper way, the better way to do it, would be to da-da-da-da-da-da. So as a policy, then, is we prefer that baptisms not be done except in the church.
This is where
Even
I'll
if they
ask
go
the-
through like a
Ooh,
adult confirmation.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I should have let in with this.
No.
Do we have 2 hours?
I did it 5 minutes ago.
Oh, this might be why then they did away with the Lutheran chapel in Ann Arbor. This might be why they took it out of central Michigan.
Not gonna answer.
I will not say anything to address that online.
That's-
But I mean, in all honesty, so you've got that, and so that's where we have the doctrine is good. Our doctrine of baptism, I think, is fantastic. What we believe about baptism, what it does, what you get from it. I 100% full bore. And if we're talking about this, I think we nailed it.
If we really believed what baptism does, we wouldn't have a problem baptizing anybody in any place.
Did you
But-
know Philip took the Ethiopian to a local church?
Thank you. This is exactly where I was going with this, because we have this great example where, and we can look at the Philip and the Ethiopian and be like, well, that text isn't about catechizing. That text isn't, because we can always point to like a Baptist or whoever who says like, well, when they talk about baptism and say, well, see, here's all these texts that say baptism doesn't do it, but it's like it's not a text about baptism. It's a text about faith in general. It's like there's that. So I think what the move is to point to Philip and the Ethiopian and say this isn't a text about catechizing. It's a text about baptism. I mean, you can't get around it, right? But it's like, yes, it is. And he didn't immediately like, okay, come on.
And not only did he not take him to church, he disappeared.
I know! He left him in the wilderness. Which is great because he's like, talking about college kids, leaving them in the wilderness. And we're like, I don't know, Philip did it. Yeah, absolutely. Where it's like, okay, well, we have, so it's like, what is, now again, the Lutheran approach to that, I say, well, okay, yeah, but that was a special case.
And it probably was.
Well,
I don't expect
yeah,
to disappear if I
To
baptize
be fair,
somebody.
that's the only time I think that happened.
But I thought catechism was teaching you about what happened at baptism. So there was sort of a fulfillment of baptism, so you came to understand when you were baptized as a baby.
Right.
So you didn't know what was happening.
Well, see, here's what we do is, when you're baptized as a baby, you have confirmation later to teach you what happened.
Yeah.
In an adult situation, we flip it where we do the catechizing first, so you make sure what you're getting into.
Right, you have adult instruction.
Right.
And that's what they were doing in these student chapels, weren't they?
Yeah. Hey, man,
Let's change sentence.
I'm just telling you, I'm not agreeing with it. But I mean, that's why it's like where I can say like, our truth is not, well, like, we don't deny the truth, but we approach it in our own particular way. Just like other denominations approach the truth in their own particular way and flavor and all that. Which is just all to say, we all do this. We have the truth. Yeah. The truth is, we're out of time. But we all like to have our own interpretation, way of dealing with it, coming at it from weird angles. Maybe we'll talk more about the Philip and Ethiopian example next time. Thank you. That was exactly where I was going with that.